My name's Dan Morgan, I'm the tax for the South. We thought tax was such a big area, we needed two of us. So I'm going to mainly touch on business tax areas. And
I hope this works. Does it work? No? So I'm a personal tax private client tax partner, and we're going to cover off the budget, mainly around the non-dom areas, and some of the changes in capital gains tax and some of the planning that could apply to some of you in the room.
just right, let me kick off with the business tax bits. As ever with the budget, since the famous November 22 sort of budget update with Theresa May, there's never any surprises anymore. They make sure they pre-announce everything via the media. So you log in now, watch the budget, and you've pretty much read it all already. They make sure there's no big surprises there. There were a few updates. So anything go as far as some people might hope for. Kept it very safe with what they had to play with financially. These are some of the key bits. Some of these aspects are of interest to some in the room. There's probably some there that aren't too much of interest. So the big headline bit was the 2% cut in NIC, which followed on from the November previous cut as well. So that is a fairly big reduction overall. Next bit on capital allowances. This was a bit of a wishy-washy bit where they want to extend the full expense into leasing assets, but only when fiscal conditions allow, which isn't the most helpful for a company to plan exactly what they're doing. VAT registration threshold up to 90k. Again, a little bit of help there, but not a big change. Non-doms, quite a big change there that Amy's going to cover. That's quite a key change. We probably feel very much trying to get in there ahead of Labour, where Labour had already earmarked that they wanted to look at that. So Conservatives probably playing a bit of a sort of early defence there. IHT, again for those non-doms, and again Amy will cover that aspect. Child benefits, just where they got the 50k threshold in for many years, and I think after a little while we thought we better increase it. After I think it's probably the best part of 10 years it's been set at 50k, so it ended up impacting lots and lots of people. Just through that threshold being kept the same. Final sort of key bit that I just wanted to highlight was pension funds, where they want to try and make it easier for pension funds to, they want to promote them investing more in the UK economy. Together we're trying to open them up into the UK tech scene. That's part of want to make sort of an equivalent Silicon Valley here in the UK. Some of the highlights. Again, there's not huge amounts that they announced. So no CT adjustment. Talked about the full expensing, and then a few other aspects that affect certain companies, but for the general majority of businesses, a lot of this stuff doesn't apply too much. So things like green industry, 120 million. It's a lot of money, but will it really make a big impact? We shall see. And then the updates on things like agricultural duty. Probably the bottom one there is quite interesting. IR35 obviously affects a lot of businesses in this country. They had quite a big push on this a number of years ago, very much applying it to large, then medium, and then they had plans to apply it to small businesses, but then sort of pulled out of it. So I guess this is a bit of a marker here that they do want to go after that aspect again, and no doubt there'll be more coming out on that in due course. So just some of the detail here. So employee NIC down 2%, and the self-employed rate comes down 3% because they'd already announced a 1% drop, and a class 2 commitment to abolish entirely. I guess the interesting thing here is, and again the press covered it quite well, although there's a drop in the NIC, obviously they've kept the thresholds the same for a long time now. Again, the media like to call that stealth tax, but to be honest, the last few budgets I've watched, they've actually said we're not changing it because we're trying to raise tax. So don't think they're really trying to hide it anymore, but it is a way where they do increase that tax take, and the amount of people paying higher rate tax is as high as it's ever been. Interesting bit for me, I guess, the NI cut. I guess to talk about the difference between an NI cut and an income tax cut. A lot of pensioners don't pay NI, and it's the working population that pay the NI. So doing a cut there is quite risky, to be honest, because Conservatives they rely on that pensioner vote quite significantly. So to actually give a cut but purposely not give that to pensioners was quite bold of them. Personally, that benefits the working population a little bit more, and I don't know whether it was part of them thinking about the sort of triple lock the pensioners have got, and maybe they thought they've got enough upside, so we'll try and do something for the working people. Some of the other asides, so SME loans, extending the recovery loan scheme, and there's been a form of that for many years now. They just rebadge it every few years with a different name. I guess the bit I thought was quite interesting, the late payment interest at the bottom there. I always find that quite interesting. So currently, if you pay your tax late, 7.75%, you get charged, which is obviously a lot higher than it's been in previous years. I guess historically, even as a tax advisor, clients paying tax late, as long as there wasn't a penalty, the interest rate was pretty low, so you didn't need to worry about it too much. Whereas now it's getting to quite chunky levels, so particularly important to pay taxes on time, particularly with as it says, the quarterly instalment regime, with the associated company rules. That's certainly catching out quite a few businesses and needs to look at. The other interesting bit there, so if you pay tax early or you're due money back, you actually earn 4.25%, which is a pretty good rate. For a corporate to actually earn that in the bank, you will struggle. And particularly because of HMRC, there's no 85 grand limit, it's totally fully backed. So sometimes if you get excess cash, maybe pay your corporate tax a little bit early. It could, a nice little interest bonus there.
So just to run through some of the changes on the property taxes, the CGT on residential property was previously 28%. Just looking through what most of our clients are trying to talk to us about is, typically I have a lot of business owners who've done very well, and they've looked at extracting their funds and putting it into privately held property. It's a really great investment. Typically it's got a high rental yield. It's a very safe investment. A lot of clients come to us and ask me, can I put this into a company? I've got, teenage children. They're going to be over 18 soon. Is there something I can do to mitigate inheritance tax? And typically, the issue is if you have a family company with your children and you're looking to, move property in, there will be an initial capital gains tax charge, and that's based on the market value, even if you don't get a penny in return. Same as if you give it to your children, you will be deemed to be selling it. So the previous rate was 28%. That's now come down to 24%. Is it still attractive to look at restructuring? Yes and no. I'll touch on this slightly later, but there previously has been a change in the capital gains tax rate charged by Labour governments. We had 40% before with taper relief. Is it worth looking at it now? Stamp duty is still a relevant consideration that hasn't really been brought into the same level of reduction. We've also had, the furnished holiday, that's a lot of changes there. So again, people are looking at is property still a good choice when it comes to investing cash. Stamp duty, we've had the multiple dwellings relief that's been abolished. So we've had a lot of planning before where people have looked at buying a plot of land or buying multiple properties and potentially redeveloping a plot of land. So we need to think a little bit more around how that's structured and whether or not you do it personally or within a company. Just to sort of cover off a few questions here, I know that we've got here is property still a worthwhile investment? So the issue with property has always been once you've had property for a while and you look to sell it, and if you've not lived in it, you're going to be hit with a 28% tax charge. If you're going to gift it or move it into a structure, you're looking at stamp duty on top of that. So a lot of clients with the reduction in the tax relief for mortgage interest are now looking at, is this worth it anymore? What are the alternatives? It is very, very difficult to plan around property that's sat with a gain. Will Labour change it? We don't know. It's worth always looking at what is the tax cost to change this. If you sold it or if you moved into a structure, what would that look like and what is a long-term saving? Typically, when you look at using a company, for example, instead of personal ownership, you get the immediate saving for income tax, but there's always going to be an entry charge, there's always going to be capital gains and stamp duty to think about. So whether or not it's the right time, it depends on what Labour would do with that 24% threshold. So moving on to the remittance basis. So typically with clients who are coming in from overseas, there have been changes before. So previously it used to be a lot more generous. If you were born outside of the UK, or you were born in the UK to parents who were from overseas, in a very, very quick summary, you could choose to be taxed in two different ways. So if you were like me in this room, you were born to UK parents, you're born here, we get taxed on our worldwide income. And we get to have tax credits for any foreign income. So if I have a US investment, I would be able to take US foreign tax credits, but the UK would have the primary tax me. People who were born outside the UK or from domiciled parents would have the option to be taxed on a remittance basis. And what that means is if I keep everything outside of the UK that's earned outside the UK, then I'm going to be taxed on my UK income plus anything I brought in. So massive changes here. And what does this actually mean for people in this regime? So you have until the 5th of April next year to continue to be taxed and choose those two different ways of being taxed. So what that means is everybody who has been resident at least from this year or before this year will be taxed on their worldwide income. Potentially, and this hasn't actually been clarified very well in the rules, the secondary consideration is, well, if I'm taxed on my worldwide income, what is my inheritance tax position? Because previously we had a different rule for inheritance tax and for income tax. So anybody who has previously claimed the remittance basis needs to take urgent action before April next year to consider their worldwide position, what their tax position will be from 6th of April next year, but also potentially what their exposure is to inheritance tax. So just to run through, the options are, we're replacing this with the residence-based regime, and this is assuming that these rules will still apply. So you have to opt in the same way you'd have to opt into the remittance basis. So you don't pay UK tax for the first 4 years of being a UK resident on worldwide income. That's very generous. At the moment, you have to obviously pay the remittance basis charge if you've been resident here for more than 7 years, and that's currently 30k. That goes up as you're here for longer. But, the massive but, you must have been non-resident for the last 10 years. So a lot of people are resident here already and non-dom. So the actual urgent action point is twofold. First, if you're coming here, if you have any employees looking to come here, you absolutely have to seek pre-arrival planning. So they have everything structured the way they need to. People who've been resident here but are still non-dom, they need to take urgent action from an income tax perspective because they might have a massive tax charge for the next year. You also need to think about, particularly this happens to a lot of our US clients, the timing of when you pay your tax. So typically, if you're resident here, you will pay, say, tax on your worldwide income if you're domiciled, and the secondary country, so you've got a property in the US, they will have the rights to tax it, and then you take the tax credit here. So you need to think about when you take the tax credit, when you file, because sometimes in the US, for example, you have to file a UK return before the December deadline in the US rather than the January deadline. So the transitional rules for existing non-doms, the option is to rebase the value of capital assets from the 5th of April 2019. In practice, this is quite difficult because you have to look at historic valuation and do that. There's a temporary 50% exemption on taxation of foreign income in the first year. The 2-year facility to bring in previously accrued foreign income and gains at a 12% rate. This is a massive opportunity for a lot of people who have previously segregated income and gains and spent a lot of time and energy making sure that their accounts overseas are kosher and they're bringing in any clean capital. That's a potential opportunity to look at that. Overseas work day relief, that's not a massive one anymore, but there's obviously a relief to employees in the first 3 years of tax residence. Previously it was 2. Again, there's a lot around this that isn't really well drafted, and it might all change anyway, but massive changes for this. So again, just to summarise, the residence-based rather than domicile-based, it won't take effect before April next year. There's a 10-year exemption period for new arrivals, but the actual test for residency was based on days and per tax year, whereas domicile was a very old concept. It was very unique to the UK. It was where your parents were from, when you were born, how much, what you had in this country. It was really historic. You have to look back a long way. So in practice, how will HMRC move from one to the other? Again, the guidance isn't really there, so we don't really have a huge amount of context there. So I think that the other major point to mention here is the 10-year tail provision for those that leave the UK. Currently, and this is a very broad way of summarising this, if you are previously deemed domiciled or domiciled in the UK and you decide to abandon everything here and go live in Mauritius, if you acquire a new domicile of choice, the typical tail is 5 years, and that goes hand in hand with the entry avoidance rule. So if you sell something, you have to be out for a 5 clean year period. So that's now moving to 10 years, and again, this will fall into whether HMRC can really track how long people have been out. How will this work in practice, we just don't know. 10 years is a long time. HMRC are the best at looking at their record keeping, so we have yet to see what this will look like. One point that isn't mentioned in the slides is if anybody has looked at previously structuring their assets overseas via an offshore trust, we think that the temporary favourable rules do not apply to trusts, so that's something that we are looking at the moment. So again, there's just a note there around personal representatives of the states will not need to have, it's completely unrelated, I don't know what's on the slide, sought commercial loans for POHT. So this is a massive consideration for people who are looking for probate. At the moment, we have 20% bridging loans for illiquid estates to POHT before you can get probate. I'm going to hand back over to you.
So this is very much looking ahead to see what will be the case with a new government Labour got in. Just pulling out here some of their key policies. So they have said for the next Parliament if they get in, corporation tax won't go above 25%. They've also committed to continuing the full expensing allowance, R&D tax credits, patent box regime, and an investment allowance. Helpfully, they've said they will set out a business tax roadmap within the first 6 months to come into power, which I always find quite interesting that you've got to vote for someone you don't really know what they're going to do, but they're going to tell you after the event, which is interesting. But I guess I'd also see that as I don't think they're going to make huge changes to the roadmap. That would be my assumption, but we'd have to wait and see. Clearly, they very much want to continue with the global push for trying to have sort of minimum tax rates across the sort of the developed world, if you like. So they're committed to that, but broadly there. So I don't think that would be huge changes. A bit on North Sea oil and gas producers. Interesting now, the one particularly probably for sort of retail-related clients. They are committed to trying to look at the business rates for the new system, trying to make it hopefully a bit more even between internet players and bricks and mortars players in that retail area, to try and help high street compete with the digital sort of multinationals. But overall, I think at the moment corporation tax-wise, business tax-wise, fairly light on detail, but nothing there that looks overly scary at the moment. Obviously, a few bit years back, if it was a Corbyn Labour, it probably would have been a bit more worrying. But these days, with Labour being a bit more central this time, they realise they need to be quite sensible. So nothing there that seems to raise many eyebrows.
So just to recap on the VAT and stamp duty charges. So controversially, and I've had a few conversations with my clients around repaying school fees. There is the suggestion that they will remove VAT and business rates exemptions from private schools. So I have had one client come to me and try to negotiate a 5-year discount on his children's school fees. The important point to note here is that typically with taxes like VAT and suggested changes, that actually they don't go back and look to amend things if you did do something like that. I don't think that it's a massive vote winner, so who knows what will happen. The major point is around, and this is in the slightly next slide, and I'll touch on it quickly here, is the business rate exemption change and what that would look like. So for anybody who currently has privately rented commercial property, who has looked at planning around their SIP owning the commercial property, maybe renting it back to their company, potentially there might be changes there, we don't know. Again, a popular vote winner is to increase the stamp duty land tax charge on overseas buyers. There is a huge amount of energy to change overseas buyers and capital gains tax and stamp duty since way back to 2015. So again, it's not a shocker. So for pensions, again, a lot of people within the tax year are looking at, will they reintroduce the pension lifetime allowance, or will they have some sort of tapering? Historically, they didn't just cut it. There was always some sort of tapering provision. So if people have started to pump a lot more money into their pensions, would they penalise people? Historically, that's never happened. There has been an appetite for carving out some sort of special treatment for public sector workers. Back when the original income restriction was announced, it mainly hit doctors who then decided to work 4 days instead of 5. So again, we'll probably see something there. Going back, this goes back to my first covering off of the capital gains tax on property. There's a rumour that it won't line with income tax rates, but I do think they'll start to look at how people have planned around capital gains tax, which typically goes hand in hand with inheritance tax planning. So I have a lot of clients who, and I'm pretty sure some of you in the room will watch the Jeremy Clarkson FAR programme, I'm sure. A lot of clients have looked at owning land around Guildford, have a beautiful long garden and a neighbouring farm. So typically there's an exposure there for inheritance tax, and what we'd look to do is have an agreement with the farmer that brings his sheep on. There's a farming agreement, so there is a business, there's a business on that land. That might change. Again, there are certain conditions around trading businesses that might be looked at. The current threshold for a business to qualify for business asset disposal relief has been 50% for inheritance tax and 80% for capital gains. Even before COVID, they looked at bringing it up to 80%. I think that there might be an appetite for that to happen, but again, this is speculative. Private equity bosses to pay 45% tax rate for closing or loopholes. Again, this is just probably a little bit more speculation again. But I do think, based on historic tax conversations, that some of these things might well be picked up on. I can see farmland being potentially attacked unless it's really a genuine farm. That's it. So I will hand back to you.